Hello, my name is Marla Neufeld, and I'm a Florida surrogacy attorney at Greenspoon Martyr. I'm the founder of the practice at Greenspoon. And today I'm joined by the very wonderful and experienced executive director and owner of Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, Katy Encalade. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Marla, for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, my pleasure. I mean, I've had the great privilege of working with your agency for many years now. And I know my clients, both intended parents and separately surrogates, are always so happy. I know as an attorney, I enjoy working with you guys because I always get very quick responses back and we're always moving things along. So it's always a pleasure to work with you.
Well, the same is true for us. We love attorneys that are able to draft and review everything thoroughly and ensure that all parties understand this process and what they're interested in. And so I know my team has always said how responsive you have been. And so the feeling is mutual.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, for our listeners today, we have so many different types of people that listen to the surrogacy space. We have intended parents and surrogates, and I just wanted to take some time to have you explain kind of like the founding of Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, how long you've been in business for, kind of where you're based out of, just a little background on the agency itself.
Okay, sure. So our surrogacy program opened in 2007. At
Okay.
that time, we really just had a Texas and a Florida branch of surrogacy. It worked a little bit different back in the day than it does now. Now our surrogacy program is nationwide. We work from
Awesome.
families, all over the U.S. and even international families that come here to the U.S. to go through surrogacy. We opened our egg donor program in 2012. And so we saw a need for a program that worked a little bit differently, had a diverse database, and wanted to have that one coordinator who will walk them through the process. And so we opened our program in 2012. We have a great team that is spread out all over the US. A lot are in the Dallas area, which is where I am. And we have an office here. We also have a good number of team members in Florida. And then Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Colorado,
Okay.
Las Vegas. So the rest of our team
Awesome.
is everywhere. A lot of our team members have experience in egg donation or surrogacy personally. Either they helped in that way or they built their family. And so we haven't really worked to just add our team locally because that experience is so key.
That's great. I mean, to hear you're expanding and helping people all over. And I know just having worked with you, I know you do a lot of work in Florida, which is why we get the chance to work together, which has been great.
Yeah. We used to have an
But
office in Florida, but after COVID,
oh,
nobody wanted to meet with us in person anymore. And so
understood.
it wasn't as necessary.
Well, it's the sign of the times that,
It
you
is.
can work so your scope can reach so far from, different places. So I get asked this a lot. If you could just explain a little bit, generally, how do you counsel your intended parents for surrogacy on the matching wait times?
Yeah. So every single agency is different, and we are no different in how we work from the beginning. So typically we say 3 weeks to 10 months. And that variation has to do with the criteria of that family.
Yes.
So do they want somebody that's local? Are they open to a first time carrier or just a proven carrier? What is their views around termination, vaccines? What type of relationship are they looking for? And
Right.
so we're able to tell a family pretty quickly, like what we would assume their wait time would be based
Right.
on those things, but it's not perfect, obviously. And so we just work with them. We're open. But the kicker to that is we don't require any fees upfront. So we don't have like a wait list where
Okay.
someone pays money and then you get put on a wait list. A lot of those agencies, then it's kind of like one for one. So as that GC comes in, they pretty much kind of got to pick somebody at the top of the list and go down from there. Of course, we love to do it the way we do because we feel like a quality match is really important.
Mhm.
And ultimately, if you've given somebody your money, eventually they will have to match you. And so we just don't think that that always yields the best results. Now, it's great for intended parents that want to make sure they get a match, but it also may not be the journey that they're looking for. And so
Yeah,
we would rather have
absolutely.
the quality match up front.
Yeah, that's great to hear and great for people to know. It is unique. And does that apply where an intended parent or parents don't have to necessarily engage you with the retainer payment for both surrogacy and egg donation?
Correct. So surrogacy, it's not so a surrogate will see their profile, an intended parent will like that profile, we'll do a match meeting, we'll send
Okay,
records to be reviewed, and then that agreement and payment is due. And the egg donor
understood.
program, they get to look at our
Okay,
website for free. Again, send medical records if she's donated before, look for that
okay,
approval from a clinic before they sign an agreement and pay that initial deposit.
awesome.
In both
Great thing.
of our programs, if the GC or egg donor doesn't pass screening, then we have refunds or rematch options available as well.
Awesome. Well, that's very helpful information to share. And I guess I'm just curious, kind of what are typical things that you look for when you do accept a surrogate into your program?
So I would say the first thing is healthy pregnancies. We're looking for GCs that have successfully gone through pregnancy, typically sometime recently within the
Yes.
past 10 years.
Okay.
We follow all ASRM guidelines, so that's a decent
Okay.
baseline there.
Yes.
We're looking for GCs that have just a pure heart and great motives to go through this process. You know, as an attorney, everything really can't be written in a contract.
Right. Of course.
And you need to get to a place where like everybody just agrees that like we're on this path for one big goal, and that's a happy, healthy baby at the end.
Right.
And so we're really looking for people. Yes, the compensation is great, but that cannot be the only motivation because there are
Right.
too many hiccups in this process for that to be the motivation.
Absolutely.
Um, they're going through an interview process with our team, always with a previous surrogate that's able to share her own experiences.
Oh,
So
cool.
we want to make sure that they understand the commitment involved and that they have a really strong support system. So, you know, parents, spouses, friends, obviously
Right.
pregnancy itself can be tiring, but there's a lot of commitments in a surrogacy journey that maybe someone doesn't have in a typical pregnancy. And we want to make sure that they are supported. Through those healthy pregnancies, like we're reviewing medical records, we're getting OB and MFM clearance. And then we
Okay.
always have a third party review health insurance if they claim to have coverage that's going
Right.
to cover a surrogacy pregnancy.
Well, that's very helpful and a very important step, I think, as well.
Yeah, it is.
So, what are some of the questions typically that are asked, like when you are matching between a surrogate and a potential intended parent? How do those conversations look?
So I always remind people that since we're not a one-for-one agency, we're already looking for those things in common just based on those profiles. So we as a staff have collaborated on families and on surrogates and decided, okay, what type of a match would be good for them to have a
Okay.
good experience. And
Right.
so in that, we're looking at proximity, termination views, COVID vaccine, what does delivery look like? But then, of course, we're going to dive deeper in a match meeting. And a big piece of that comes around expectations around communication during
Oh,
their
yeah.
journey.
Absolutely.
That is huge. What is expected in that relationship? How much does how much is that intended parent going to want to be at OB appointments and delivery, and what does that delivery room look like? We do help create a birth plan where everybody's on the same page, and we give that to the hospital. But still
Awesome.
understanding that early on, does intended father want to cut the umbilical cord? What are the plans for pumping after delivery? Is the GC open to that? Do the intended parents even want that? So that ideal delivery, maybe what that relationship's going to look like long term. Some people might be looking of more of like a cut and dry transaction where
Right.
more people are looking for that long term relationship. I mean, I was a surrogate 10 years ago and I didn't know them, of course.
Yeah.
But like the intended mom, we have become friends over 10 years and we
That's
don't live in
awesome.
the same city. That isn't what we thought. And we're super
Right.
grateful that that's what's happened. And then usually they're connecting on things in common. I was talking to a team member the other day and she was like, this intended mom and GC talked about Taylor Swift for 30 minutes on our match
That's so
meeting.
funny.
And, and it made me, but that is so common. We want there to be, some commonality that always helps. And in any
Absolutely.
relationship, having that commonality is going to help it to thrive and grow through this process and build that trust when and if something happens that is less than ideal.
Yeah, I really do second what you said about communication really is one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest issues I see if there ever is a problem. Many times it's rooted in communication. And I think that to the extent that people see eye to eye, to the best extent they can at the beginning, because obviously you don't know how things will evolve over time.
Right.
But you want to make sure those expectations are set correctly. If a surrogate's expecting a highly involved intended parent and the parent wants it to be a little bit more transactional, it just creates tension. And it's best to eliminate as much as possible any tensions in the process, obviously.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And so I know you mentioned you guys are really working everywhere. And, is there a typical place where, like, predominantly you're finding mostly your surrogates where they're located?
Well, because of how our business was started, that's where our reputation is.
Right.
I'm sure where Google loves to show us as well. I'm sure there's a component of that. So
Right.
about 50% of our surrogates are either in Texas, Oklahoma, or Florida.
Okay.
And then another 50% are just spread out everywhere.
Okay.
I would say we're more middle America
Okay.
to the East Coast rather than to the West Coast.
Right.
California is quite saturated. Fees are a lot higher there. So we don't spend a ton of, like, we still do plenty of business out there, but we don't do a
Right.
ton, and that
Like
isn't
for the main
necessarily like,
focus.
yeah, it's not where we advertise.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
I know you guys do a ton of work in the matching process and getting through transfer. And, what are some of the services that once someone's pregnant, how does the agency help through a pregnancy and even like after the delivery? What kind of role is there for the agency at that point?
Yeah. We are pretty hands-on in both programs. And the number one thing fertility clinics always tell us is how proactive we are. And so every single case that comes through gets one coordinator that is going to walk them through this process from
Awesome.
start to finish. All of our coordinators have, all of ours in the surrogacy program have been surrogates before and multiple
Wow.
times. So they understand the hiccups and issues. They all go through continuing education around those things, around communication and mediation. And so they're very well versed in what that could look like. But so, of course, from the match process to facilitating that match, to then connecting with the fertility clinic to decide, okay, now what? What do they want? And so, typically that's testing and screening. Sometimes that's local. If it's not, then we're booking the travel and taking
Right.
care of everything there, booking psychological evaluations and consultations. Of course, when the time comes and everybody's screened, then we are referring them to wonderful attorneys like yourself who we trust and have worked with. We really think it's important. Like, you can't get an agreement online and call it your own. Your buddy cannot represent you just because he's a lawyer.
Right.
So we require everybody to be an art attorney and, have some experience in egg donation and surrogacy. Equally, surrogates, egg donors, intended parents all have to have separate legal representation.
Yes.
And we require those attorneys to do reviews, not just sign off. And so we're making sure that all of those things are done, especially if maybe they've come to us with an attorney. So we're working through that. Of course, once everybody gets their calendar, that coordinator is going to have their calendar, which is a little odd, I think, in the industry, but like, that coordinator is going to be, okay, do you understand your med dosage? Do you have
Awesome.
all your meds? Actually, everybody schedules a med call and we say, you're supposed to have this much
Oh,
Menopur, this much Lupron. Do you have it? And they're
yeah,
like
that's
going
great.
through their box.
Yeah, because like a lot of
Um,
intended parents have been through this, but to the surrogates, many times they've never had to deal with this level of like medication and how precise it
right.
needs to be. And I know a
Well,
lot of
and
surrogates
even
are
the
nervous about
repeats,
that.
yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
and even the repeats, it's different.
Mm,
Like, they
it's
might
true.
have done,
Right.
vaginal estrase and now they're doing an injection, or,
Right.
a Lupron protocol for egg donors, maybe not the next time. And so we like to make sure that they know that. Big appointments were big injections, like in our egg donor program, our coordinator makes sure that she took her trigger injection on time, within 5 minutes, even if it's 2
Right.
a.m. That coordinator setting her alarm, going to send her a
Wow.
text like, hey girl, you did that right. So
That's
we're very
amazing.
yeah, we're very hands-on in that. I
I
think I
wish I
said
had
so.
that when I was going
Yeah.
through this. That's very cool.
It's fine. Yeah, it's nice to know. I mean, we can't be perfect, but we are definitely going to do our best to make sure everybody understands so there are no hiccups. We help create birth plans, and so those are all taken care of. We will do anything in between from a legal aspect to the hospital to make sure everything works out. Of course, we work with you to get the information that you would need
Right.
upon delivery. We help vet hospitals and help intended parents say, like, okay, this is when a hospital tour is, this is what you'll want to book. Find
Awesome.
out, are they going to get their own room? Are they going to need to room in or make alternate plans? Can they be
Right.
in the delivery room? So there's no surprises. Of course, at delivery, we take care of everything that needs to be done, from an emotional stance of like making sure everybody is fine and everything's going well and navigating that, the legal aspects. But then we walk, typically it's about 6 months postpartum with
Okay.
a family, making sure that GC is recovering well, intended parents have adjusted, if they need anything, how's that relationship going? And then, of course, the medical bills that are going to follow, making sure
Right.
that all of that is taken care of before we're closing out that third party escrow account.
Yeah, it's really important to remember the post birth because there's
Yeah.
definitely ends to tie up. And I think it can be a common thing where
Yeah.
like some people feel less supported. So it's really nice to
Mhm.
hear that there's still, some hands-on help during that time because the just closing up escrow is like a big production. You have to make sure everything's done,
Oh,
everything's paid and all of that.
yeah. I mean, we even for our surrogates offer like a health and wellness postpartum group that helps them like
Oh,
get
it's
back
amazing.
physically fit, a 6 week program that we gift them at about 8 weeks, 10 weeks postpartum, that they can like join a group of other surrogates
Very
in
cool.
order to like feel that support as they're, surrogates are often kind of on a low. They've been doing this thing and it's been fun and they've been in this relationship. And even for intended parents, they've had this really close relationship usually.
Right.
And then they get home and they have a baby and there's so much to do. And so some things can happen in that relation, it can kind of trail off a little bit. So
Yeah,
we're here to help navigate those expectations around that, but also then
that's
see
really great.
how we can walk along that surrogate to support her
That's
better through that
amazing.
postpartum phase.
So you mentioned a support group for the surrogates. What other resources does the agency have? Like I know you mentioned you have a podcast as well. Like what other
Yeah.
types of information do you offer to prospective parents, surrogates, and whatnot?
We have private Facebook groups for both our parents and our
Oh,
surrogates, where they
okay.
can connect with people, kind of see where they're at in the journey. Ask, some people will ask questions like, I want to give her like a present at the end. What have you done? What's fun?
Yeah.
Or and even things like, man, we're really navigating like a difficult situation. So it's nice to have, or I'm feeling this way. Did anybody else ever feel this way?
Hmm.
And so those Facebook groups are really helpful for them throughout. So at Match, they then get added to those groups and can
Cool.
participate there.
Very nice. That's very
And then we have
helpful.
local meetups in different areas around the country. Most of our coordinators host 2 or 3 a year. And so we just kind of send out an invitation like, here we are. And anytime an intended parent is local to one of our coordinators, we love to grab coffee. Just one of our coordinators in Houston did that last week. And I was in a meeting with her. She was like, it was just the highlight of and that person was
Oh,
postpartum. She was like 10 weeks postpartum, that mom was. And she was just like, I would love to connect. And they went to coffee and that fills our cup too.
yeah.
As team
That's
members getting
nice.
to that face-to-face time.
That's awesome. Well, it's so
Yeah.
helpful to like be there in all the different ways. And I know that people will be in very good hands when working with you, no matter what
Thank you.
person's coming to you, parents, surrogates. It's a really nice setup that you have. You can tell you care so much about it. And, just wanted to share with our listeners, what is the best way to reach Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions and who should they contact for kind of like that initial intake?
I always encourage people to visit our website, createahappyfamily.com. From there, it'll get you to the right place on whatever you're looking for, a parent needing an egg donor or a surrogate or both, an egg donor or surrogate, it'll get you to the right place. But
Okay.
then they can fill out an intake form if they'd like, or give us a call. We are accessible via social media as well. And
Okay,
so our handles on Instagram and TikTok are Create a Happy Family. On Facebook, we are Egg Donor and is spelled out Surrogate Solutions.
perfect.
And then, of course, I would encourage them, you mentioned it earlier, to just learn more and hear the inspirational stories on our Me, You, and Who podcast.
Very cute. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing about Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions. I'm so happy to promote, with the world about what you do and how you help. And for our listeners, we'll put some information in the show notes about how to contact Katie and her team. And thank you again so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Marla. I really appreciate it. It was
My
great talking
pleasure.
with you.
Thank you.